My name's Ben Henwood. I'm an assistant professor at USC School of Social Work, and for the past 10 plus years I've been working on issues regarding homelessness, in particular chronic homelessness. The focus of my research is on that topic, but also as a clinical social worker I've been involved in programs, and I ran a program that uses a housing first model to address homelessness. Okay, so what drew me to this social issue, really? If I think back, it was really that this has been an ongoing issue since the early 80s, when chronic homelessness was first identified as such. And for a long time, we didn't have very good options, and it just seemed to get worse. And when I started my career is when I was just started to read some research about housing first and learn about how, you take the simple idea of giving people access to an apartment, and they actually do quite well. And it sort of went against the way services had been provided. And there was something about the simplicity of it and doing things differently to actually make a difference and find an effective solution to a problem that drew me to the topic. But then once I started working in housing first programs, learning about people's stories and their recovery and what they have overcome, and it was very rewarding work, one of the most rewarding experiences of my life. There are a lot of misconceptions, and some obvious ones are that if you end up homeless, that it's because of choices you made, poor decisions. And I think I don't know if it's as much the case now, because we've had several big recessions in the past decade where we've seen people who have been doing okay and surviving end up losing their homes and things like that. So I think that's not as strong a myth as it once was, but still, for the population I work with who do have a lot of mental health issues, addiction issues, I think there's a belief that, well, if they could get a handle on these issues, somehow they wouldn't have become homeless, or they wouldn't remain homeless. There's a lot of structural issues. This is about poverty. This is about people not getting opportunities. It's not to say that people don't play a role and their decisions don't matter. Clearly they do, but I think interventions like Housing First show, actually people can do quite well if given the opportunity. So I think that sort of putting the burden on the individual is the biggest myth, and there are policy changes, there are structural changes that can be made, and to reframe and eradicate some of these social problems we face. There's a lot of homelessness in this country. The visible homeless, what one tends to see on the street, is actually a rather small subpopulation, and those are people that tend to have a lot of physical health conditions, mental health conditions, addiction issues, and so they're the most visible of homeless populations. But there are plenty of families which tend to be moms with their kids who end up homeless, and they are not necessarily on the streets. They might be using shelters, they might be in cars, they might be doubled up with other families. So there are lots of different, a lot of youth homelessness exists as well. So I mean, look, the biggest cause is it's poverty. It's not having the resources to be able to afford a home. If you address that issue, a lot of these other things don't matter as much. That's not to say things such as substance abuse, having a physical ailment or condition. Oftentimes people lose work and they don't have coverage, and they lose their job and their home. So it can be complicated, and not having family supports, things that one might rely on. Kids graduate college, often they move back home. If there's no home to move back to, parents have issues, then maybe they end up homeless. So it can be quite complicated, and it has to do with a lot of different factors. you don't want to overlook the obvious issue, which is just one of poverty. The numbers are promising nationally. Over the past, 5+ years, we've seen a decline in numbers of people on the streets. LA has been quite has sort of bucked that trend. We have not seen those declines that we have nationally, and it's complicated. And I know for a fact it's not because the county has not been providing additional housing, more housing for people. They have. So I think if you look at the amount of people that are accessing housing, it's substantial, and there are significant efforts to increase that. Why there are more people, I think probably has to do with a lot of different factors. Some of which are returning veterans, and LA has the largest homeless veteran population. Some is just being able to identify people who are homeless, so how accurate the counts are, that's another issue. So overall, LA has lagged a little bit, though the ongoing initiatives right now, and there are a lot of innovative ones. The Department of Health Services is now in the housing business, as well as the Department of Mental Health and other Hilton Foundation and United Way, and there's a big concerted effort to address it. So I would expect to see some significant declines in LA as well. I think what's going on right now is all very positive. The one caveat to that is, you can create as many housing programs, housing first programs, to address this issue. But, the whole idea of prevention is another important thing to think about. And, why is it that we have so many people on the streets in this country? And, so not to get too abstract, but I do think, in income inequality, poverty, a lack of any sort of policy on affordable housing, public, affordable housing in this country. There is some, but it's not anywhere near the scope that we would need to really be able to prevent future homelessness and to address what we currently have. So I think, when you talk about the initiatives going on now, I think they're all really important. They're helping change the landscape. On the other hand, I do think these are larger issues, and it's not just about homelessness. It's about all the problems that arise when we have to see such a gap in income that we have today. So I think, thinking along those lines is an important part of it as well. One way that has been helpful is that every year in January there's a homeless count, and people can volunteer, and it typically occurs at night. People go out and try to identify how many people are on the streets, and so that's a great opportunity where people can go and volunteer. You are providing the information that we need to continue to get funding to support this issue. So being able to have the numbers, and to measure this is important. If you don't measure it, it's hard to address it and know you're making progress. So that's one way you can do it. There are plenty of organizations, that provide temporary shelter and food, and I think that's a typical way people sometimes get involved and go down to the missions and help do that. The other thing is the United Way. They sponsor it's like a Kobe Bryant walk to raise money and awareness, and so I think there are these types of things that can help.